Welcome back. Today, we're looking at a really detailed lecture summary on veterinary terminology, breaking down words using Greek and Latin parts. It's thorough, definitely, but we think a few structural tweaks could make it even more effective for someone just starting out.
Agreed. It's solid stuff, but when you're teaching how words are built, the order you introduce things is key. Really key for making it stick.
Yeah, you need the building blocks presented in the way they actually work together.
Not just, listed out.
Okay, so let's jump right into that with the core components. Our first point is the foundational definitions of the term parts could be reorganized for a clearer sort of building block hierarchy, better for initial learning.
Right, because the current flow, it introduces the four parts: prefix, root, combining vowel, suffix. But then the sequence kind of pulls apart a really fundamental relationship.
Looking at the notes, yeah, it defines the combining vowel, that's part 2, before it really gets into the combining form as part 3, and the prefix comes even before the root structure is fully laid out.
And that separation, that's the weakness we're seeing. It makes it harder to grasp the critical idea that the root and the combining vowel have to merge to make that essential unit.
The combining form.
The combining form, exactly, like leuco or gastro. Students really need to see that connection right away as like one functional piece. If you split up how you define the pieces of that core unit, the student's trying to link two different sections in their head just to get one core concept. That's just unnecessary work, especially early on.
Yeah, it seems like you're making it harder, not easier. They're trying to learn the terms, and they're flipping pages just to define the most important part.
Right.
So what's the practical fix? How do we make that relationship totally clear from the get-go?
So our suggestion is create a dedicated, unified section. Call it something like the core unit. Put it right after the basic intro definitions.
Okay.
And in this section, you group the definitions of the root, the combining vowel, and the combining form, the result, all together.
Ah, okay.
This way, you establish how that core structure works first before you get into all the optional add-ons like prefixes and suffixes.
I like that. Build the engine before adding the spoilers and the wheels. Makes sense. So how would you show this working? A concrete example.
Definitely. You'd move all the definitions for those three parts, root, vowel, form, into this single early section. And then right there, use a term like panleukopenia.
Okay.
Break it down completely to show exactly how that central piece, leuco, is the combining form. Show it's this one solid unit carrying the meaning white blood cells ready to connect with the prefix and suffix.
Right, without needing a separate explanation later about where that O came from or why it's there.
Precisely. It just flows better. Less cognitive load right at the start.
Okay, that feels like a strong structural improvement. Let's shift gears to the prefixes. The critique here is that the categorization, while comprehensive, it lacks a strategic hierarchy. It kind of downplays some really crucial clinical concepts.
That's right. I mean, the material does a good job classifying them logically. You've got number or quantity, position, time or speed. It's very organized.
Very neat.
But a neat organization isn't always the best for teaching priority.
And that really jumps out in Section 5, the one called Other Common Prefixes.
Yeah, that's the weakness. It's this generic bucket, and really vital clinical concepts, things defining intensity or state, like hyper for elevated, hypo for depressed. They're just lumped in there.
Alongside this, meaning difficult or painful, and mal, meaning bad or poor.
Exactly.
And grouping them like that just minimizes their importance pedagogically speaking. Clinically, a student's going to hit terms like hyperglycemia or hypotension almost immediately.
Day one, yeah.
These are fundamental modifiers for diagnosis, but structurally, they're treated the same as, say, prefixes about direction or counting.
Right. They describe states, often pathological states. They fundamentally change the nature of the root concept, so they really deserve more prominence structurally than, a list about time prefixes.
So the suggestion?
Elevate them. Create a dedicated high-level category specifically for prefixes that signal clinical status or intensity or maybe quality.
Okay, a structural change that flags their importance right away.
Yeah.
That instantly makes that section feel more relevant because you're showing the student, hey, you need these for understanding conditions, not just for passing a vocabulary test.
Exactly. So, for concrete examples, rename Section 5, Call it something clearer, like prefixes indicating clinical qualities, state, or intensity.
Mm-hmm.
And then make sure those core clinical modifiers, hyper, think hyperglycemia, hypo, like hypoglycemia, dysphagia, malabsorption, even eu, like in euthanasia, make sure they're featured prominently there.
Front and center.
Right. It makes the list less like just an encyclopedia entry and more like a clinically useful tool right from the start.
Excellent. Prioritization, not just classification. Okay, third point. Let's look at the method itself. The 3 steps for actually analyzing terms.
Yeah, this is a good method overall, but there's a small gap in the instructions. Fixing it could prevent a really common mistake students make.
Okay, the topic sentence here is, the 3-step analysis process needs a clarifying intermediate step to ensure the learner correctly isolates the pure root meaning, especially when stripping away that combining vowel.
Exactly. Right now, the material says, A, dissect the word, then B, start at the end, define suffix, then prefix, then root.
Standard approach.
It is, but the weakness pops up right when the student gets to defining the root in step B. If they're looking at a complex term with a combining form, maybe like gastroenteritis.
Right.
The first dissection step shows them the gastro. It shows the O, the combining vowel, attached to the root. But when defining the meaning of the root, they need to mentally ignore that O. The root meaning comes from gast or enter alone.
And the current rules don't explicitly tell them how to handle that vowel during the definition stage. So a student might correctly break down leuco. But then they define the root as leuco, meaning white/linking vowel, instead of just isolating leuk, meaning white. They're confusing the form needed for connection with the core concept itself.
That confusion is exactly the failure point we want to avoid. It muddies the water.
Okay, so we need to remove that ambiguity.
Right. So the suggestion is insert a specific actionable step between the dissect step A and the begin at the end step B. A new step.
Okay, what does this step do?
It explicitly guides the learner. Isolate the pure root meaning before you start defining the parts from end to beginning.
How would you phrase that instruction so it's really clear and becomes automatic for them?
You'd want to amend the text in the Analyzing Medical Terms section. Add something like, before defining the root, mentally strip away the combining vowel, like O or E if it's present as part of a combining form.
Okay.
And crucially, use concrete examples right there. Say explicitly, for example, separate gastro from gastro, or separate leuk from leuco to find the core meaning before you define it.
Ah, I see.
This tiny clarification makes sure the definition hits the actual anatomical part or concept accurately. Once they've isolated that pure root correctly, then they proceed to combine all the meanings in the final step. Much smoother.
That small detail feels really important, especially for longer words with maybe 2 or more combining forms. It stops misinterpretation dead in its tracks and reinforces that first lesson about what a root actually is.
Absolutely. It just makes the whole methodology more robust, more foolproof.
Okay, this is great. These 3 critiques really give the material a significant structural lift. It shifts it from just being, a comprehensive list
Right.
to a much more functional, prioritized way to learn.
Yeah, the focus was all on boosting the teaching impact through better sequencing and prioritizing. The real takeaway is about that structural integrity. So first, unify those core definitions: root, combining vowel, combining form. Get them into a single core unit section early on. Establishes the foundation clearly, cuts down that initial confusion.
Second, establish clinical relevance much earlier. Create that new, prominent category for key prefixes like hyper and hypo. Pull them out of the generic list to really highlight their importance in diagnosis.
And finally, refine the analysis strategy. Add that crucial intermediate step. Explicitly instruct learners to isolate the pure root meaning by mentally stripping the combining vowel before defining. Removes a big potential stumbling block.
Excellent. Implement these strategic refinements and definitely send the revised work back our way. We'd be happy to take another look.
Yeah, absolutely. Until next time.